All right, so let's talk some good news because that is sorely lacking in the world right now. So, the article I have for you today is Republicans passed an amendment to curtail Obamacare. It just backfired in a surprising way. And the subheading, they wanted to make a statement about access to health care, but they didn't think it would end up helping trans youth. So that's always a good thing. It's always lovely when a bunch of bigots end up getting their hatred thrown, well, not thrown back at them, but basically it bites them in the ass. A three-judge panel for the Ohio 10th District Court of Appeals ruled that gender-affirming care for minors constitutes an essential medical treatment for trans youth and that the ban on gender-affirming care is in violation of a state constitutional amendment. Originally passed by Republicans to undermine Obamacare, the amendment is now being used to prevent federal or state intervention in denying any form of essential health care. The ban on gender-affirming treatment in Ohio started in January of last year when Ohio legislatures approved HB 68. The bill did two things: ban hospitals from providing gender-affirming treatments to trans minors, and ban trans girls from participating in girls' sports. Governor Mike DeWine, a Republican of course, despite signing an executive order around that time banning hospitals from performing gender-affirming surgeries on minors, which generally isn't a thing, attempted to veto HB 68 only for the Republican majority to override him. DeWine stated his reasoning as follows: were I to sign House Bill 68, or were House Bill 68 to become law, Ohio would be saying that the state, that the government knows better what is medically best for a child than the two people who love that child the most, their parents. If only he could expand that reasoning to other issues, but still, baby steps. Two families of transgender youth represented the ACLU of Ohio and the law firm of Goodwin Procter filed a lawsuit against the ban. Judge Michael J. Holbrook of Franklin County issued a temporary restraining order blocking the enforcement of the ban when it comes to pharmaceutical treatments. Disappointingly, the same judge would later reverse his decision and uphold the ban. Make no mistake, this fight is not over, Harper Selden, senior staff attorney with the ACLU, said in a statement at the time. Indeed, the fight was not over. In a smart move, the plaintiffs argued that gender-affirming treatment be considered essential medical treatment, pointing to the numerous medical studies proving its effectiveness in treating gender dysphoria and improving the mental health and well-being of transgender adolescents. For that reason, they argued, it should be protected under Ohio's Healthcare Freedom Amendment. The amendment was passed in 2011 and was pushed by the state's right wing with help from the Ohio Liberty Council, Ohio Right to Life, and then State Senator Bob Peterson, of course a Republican, as an attack on the Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. In doing so, they inadvertently gave Ohioans broader constitutional protections around health care because the amendment prohibits any law from banning the purchase or sale of health care or health insurance, or even imposing a fine on such purchases. So, you prove something is health care, it can't be banned. So, yeah. Basically, the right wingers fell down on their own petard. The state responded to this argument by saying that gender-affirming care doesn't qualify as health care, which is bullshit. It does qualify. They relied on the testimony of anti-trans medical experts, but the judges looked at the so-called experts' credentials and found them to be unreliable state witnesses. Dr. James Cantor, as described in the ruling's notes, is not a physician, has never practiced as a licensed clinical psychologist in the United States, is not licensed to treat patients under the age of 16, and has never provided treatments to patients under the age of 16. Dr. Paul Hughes had a history of anti-trans advocacy. Citing his testimony in a transgender bathroom ban case, he stated, "Conditioning children into believing that a lifetime of impersonating someone of the opposite sex, achievable only through chemical and surgical interventions, is a form of child abuse." Who's conditioning anybody? This is how they feel. What the fuck? I've had people come after me for saying feel, but just because they feel a certain way doesn't mean there isn't something biological going on, whether it be something in their brains or the fact that they're freaking intersex. I mean, it still comes out as a feeling. The court also found that he never diagnosed or treated a patient with gender dysphoria. Okay, so continuing on with my thought, which I seem to have lost, nobody's impersonating shit. The fact that, now, granted, I can understand that if you think that males are impersonating women, of course you're going to lose your shit and freak out that these people are going into a woman's bathroom or a girl's bathroom. And I've mentioned that makes, based on, if you go by that, if you start with that statement, of course you're going to think that they're just trying to trick women so they can get clothes or whatever, because men have never, ever used brute force to force women to do anything. They have to trick them. So, but nobody's conditioning anybody. Nobody in schools are saying you have to be trans. You have to be the opposite sex. Nobody is saying that. Literally nobody is saying that. What they are saying is that if you do feel a certain way, if you realize that you do not feel comfortable in your body because you feel like you were born in the wrong body, if you feel like you actually should be the opposite gender of the sex you were born as, that is something that only a child can understand. That's the only thing anybody can understand. Do I understand what makes me a woman? No. No, I do not. I just know that I am one. Is it just simply because I was born female? Maybe. But I don't have gender dysphoria. So we're going with it. So to have someone do this holier than thou, I know better than the people experiencing their own lives. And not only that, but completely dismiss trans people. Because let's face it, if you're not just talking about children anymore. Because suddenly it's perfectly okay as an adult? I don't think so. Once you've established that you're impersonating someone of the opposite sex, you are conditioned to think like that, you're basically hating on all trans people, not just kids. All right. And of course, you wouldn't diagnose someone as having gender dysphoria. If how can you diagnose someone with something that you don't believe exists? Okay, and then we continue with the third witness. Oh, Dr. Stephen Levine, the state's sole witness. Wait, what about the other two? Okay. Did have experience in this field. However, he testified that he does not support a categorical ban on gender affirming treatment and provided no evidence that such care was unsafe. So, the state's sole witness actually argued against their case. That is how batshit their argument is. Their own witness actually said, no, you're wrong. With the state's only expert failing to justify the ban, the decision to rule gender affirming care as a protected form of essential health care was made. Frida Levinson, legal director at the ACLU of Ohio, celebrated the decision. Today we celebrate this win not only for our brave plaintiffs, but for all LGBTQ plus Ohioans and their families. This win restores the rights of trans youth in Ohio to choose vitally important health care with the support of their families and physicians. We are grateful by the court's decision, which soundly rejects this interference of politicians with Ohioans' bodily autonomy. Although this litigation will likely not end here, we remain fervently committed to preventing this egregious bill from ever taking effect. The path towards protecting the rights and civil liberties of trans Ohioans goes on, and we will continue to hold the torch. So, at least for now, that's good news for trans youth in Ohio, because when you boil it down, you should not be telling doctors, experts, how to practice medicine. And, a lot of these people, whether it be politicians or everyday people who are anti-trans, they might think that they're actually being empathetic and they don't want to put these children in a situation where they have no choice but to commit suicide. But what they don't understand is the mental anguish that these people go through by being forced to basically live a lie. They have to live as a person that they are not. And to the extent that they have to maybe marry someone that they probably wouldn't get married to because there's no attraction there, forced to have a family, forced to do all sorts of things just to satisfy this society that's bigoted, simply because they can't handle that trans people exist. A lot of those people won't get that far. A lot of those people will eventually kill themselves because they are being forced to live a lie after a lie after a lie, which affects more and more people, which will just oppress them more and more. It will not do anything to help them. So if you truly think that you are not doing anything to harm these children or trans people in general, yes you are. Yes you are, because this is something that needs to be addressed. Just like, even if you consider it just a mental illness, even if that were the case, they still need treatment. To say a pithy remark about, oh, it's just a mental illness. So is violent schizophrenia. I don't think you would go up to a violent schizophrenic and tell them that they just need to, that's just all in their head and they just need to get over it, you will probably end up dead because violent schizophrenic. So, but I'm pretty sure most of these people wouldn't do a thing like that because they don't actually hate people who are mentally ill. They just want to hate on trans people. So they try to come up with something that they think sounds plausible without thinking about how they are still showing less than zero sympathy. Because even if this was just a mental illness, you're basically saying that anybody who's mentally ill, it's just all in their heads and they just have to get over it. And I'm sorry, where's the sympathy there? None. And that's if it was a mental illness, which it is not. Is it something that that they think about and that they realize that they were born in the wrong body, or in the case of intersex, have organs from both sexes and they realize that they identify closer with one than the other? I mean, how can, so yes, in that regard, but that's, you could say that about anything. Anything, like, why do people like this rather than this? Well, it's all in their head. It's not anything else. You could say that about so many things. Why do some people like skydiving? You know, that they're, and this is before they've gone skydiving. They really want to try it. Well, because they are thrill seekers. And where does that originate? Up here. So, yes, everything, pretty much every decision someone makes originates in their freaking heads, because unlike these people, they have working brains and their brains actually produce thoughts. And thoughts lead to action. I cannot believe I actually have to explain this, how being a human works. You get a thought in your head, you either act on it, or you decide, yeah, probably not a good idea. But every action starts as a thought. That is not mental illness. That is how life works. That's how humanity works. Now, obviously, there's more to it, like, say, pain. Obviously, your brain is telling you that something hurts. You know, you didn't have to look at a wound and decide it hurts. Your brain tells you that. But your brain is reacting to something that happens to you. So obviously it's not as simple as a thought in your head. There's much more to it. But people who are flippant about mental illness treat it like it is. Like thoughts don't exist unless you're doing something that is classified as mental illness. Not how this works. So, yeah. I appreciate that there are some of you who think that you're helping trans people, and especially trans kids, by thinking you're protecting them by not giving them the proper health care that they need. But no, you're not. You're not helping at all. You are making their lives worse. because you are telling them that the way they feel is wrong. And you have no right to tell them that. Especially if you do not know who these people are. I mean, granted, there are plenty of parents who will go down that road, but still, that's still better than someone a kid has never met telling them how they should feel about their bodies. Just not how this works. Anyway, that is all I have for this video. And with that, I will see you guys in the next one.